morning. It's Thursday, March 16th. And as I got ready to do this rant, I looked, of course, for several things to talk about. And there were some really nice topics floating around out there. Like I could speak about the Russian fighter plane that shot down the American drone on the outskirts of the Ukraine. And then, of course, there was the huge layoffs at Meta, which is a signal that the tech industry is overloaded with people and the businesses of tech are not doing as well as they should. So there were things really to talk about. But what I'm going to talk about is the continuing situation with the Silicon Valley Bank. The Silicon Valley Bank collapse was the first of its kind. The collapse was driven by a Twitter run. Right, that's right. It wasn't people lined up and filling the corridors of the bank trying to get their money out. People were online using their laptops to withdraw the money from them. Now this new twist, this online withdrawal, was, as they say in Yiddish, verschärft, because the industry that this bank primarily served was the tech industry. So when you look at that and you figure out how many people in the tech industry were paying attention to this bank, you can understand why the withdrawals took place online. And the withdrawals online were monumental. The customers withdrew $42 billion in a single day last week from the Silicon Valley Bank. Imagine that, $42 billion removed from the bank in a single day, which left the bank with $1 billion in negative cash balance. There is no way in the world that $42 billion could be physically, by physically I mean people standing online, could ever be withdrawn in a single day. But electronically, anything is possible. So this withdrawal left them with $1 billion in a negative balance. And this was caused by Twitter and by some other information providing services, which put the word out. There were private chat groups talking about this situation. And in the day leading up to the bank's collapse, multiple prominent venture capitalists took to Twitter, and they used Twitter particularly, and used their platform to raise alarms about the situation. And sometimes these messages were typed in cap with big underlines. And they urged investors to rethink where they kept their cash. They urged these small companies that had a lot of money invested in Silicon Bank, not invested, but deposited, had a lot of money deposited in Silicon Bank. They urged them to think about where they were keeping their cash. And the founders and the CEOs of these companies shared these tweets concerning the situation at the bank in what they called Slack channels. This is all according to the Wall Street Journal. A Slack channel is a place where people of the same ilk want to share information in one place. And the teams can share ideas and make decisions and move the work forward. So this was not a single bunch of people living and working independently. These depositors got together and figured out what they were going to do. And these depositors were probably not small depositors, but many of them businessmen. Many of them with small companies and had money deposited at the Silicon Valley Bank. Now, many banks use the money that's deposited with them to invest in certain items, and sometimes those investments can be speculative. But Silicon Valley took a very conservative approach, and they invested in bonds, safe bonds, government bonds, with low interest rates, because those were safe. They considered them safe investments. But what happened was the inflation took over and interest rates rose. And that rise in interest rates caused the banks' investments in those bonds. The price of those bonds started to drop. So Silicon Valley, which was doing a very conservative investing job, got caught by inflation. And the value of their investments started to go down. And I am sure that contributed to the fact that these tech guys recognized that. They were watching what was going on within the bank, and that triggered this mass exodus. In a way, this is a historical event because of the speed at which the withdrawals were made and the ability to make these withdrawals. Remember, you don't have to show up in person. You have a mobile phone. You have a laptop. You have a computer. You can get at your money. And so, because of the ease of depositing and withdrawing, that's what made this bank run new and exciting in my mind because it's a historic event. And Silicon Valley must take the blame for most of this, because they were uniquely susceptible to the factors that caused this rapid disposal of their bank. They were focused on a tech-savvy customer base. So they had to understand what could possibly happen if something went wrong. You got people who are tech savvy and know exactly how to handle the devices at their disposal, the mobile phones, the laptops, the computers. And you leave the door open to depositing online and withdrawing online. You are much to blame for the speed at which you failed. If people had to stand online for their money, you would have still been in business possibly. And then you have those who weren't lucky enough to realize what was happening and didn't get online to withdraw their money. These people got lucky because the president decided that he would honor and give back all the money in these accounts. So these accounts were not limited to the $250,000 that the FDIC insures. And that's a big break for these people. And I don't know that any of them were really thinking about getting all their money. They probably were just trying to salvage whatever they could. I mean, during the run they could take all their money out, but once it collapsed, they would have had a bigger problem. So there were many of them are smiling right now because they had millions in their bank accounts, but they're getting all of it. So this was a historic event. And this should put many small banks on the alert that they too are susceptible to this type of collapse if they don't watch their funds and everything carefully. Because now, with online banking and the speed at which people can get at their money, every small bank is susceptible to a collapse like this, to a bank run, an electronic bank run. This, in many ways, is a historic event, as much as it is a sad event. And then, of course, there are some investigations into possible chicanery on the part of the Silicon Valley executives. But that's a story for another day. So I leave you with this piece of the tale right now, and have a great day. Bye.